السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum. So we're just waiting a few moments for more people to join us. As soon as we see them logging in, we'll start, inshallah. So I can see more people joining. Okay. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Coffee Therapy, brought to you by Being Me. Coffee Therapy is where we address hot topics, trends, community challenges, and current affairs. We want to talk about to you guys about what matters most. Be sure to tune in every month, support us, and let us know how we're doing back and commenting below. Before we begin, we would like to start the session with the blessing of Allah and invite our beloved Quran reciter, Sister Aisha Maryam, also known as Sister Ashley Petre. She converted to Islam almost 20 years ago. She's a teacher by trade who worked at several Ottawa Islamic schools and enjoys volunteering in her community. She's a former board member of Izza Learning Center, Ottawa's first Quran school for women as well as children. Sister Aisha is a busy mother of four who understands the daily struggles that mothers face and appreciates the support from the community. Sister Aisha will recite the for us. Thank you for joining us today, Sister Aisha. Please start us off, inshallah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا. Chapter 78, ayahs 1 to 16, the great news. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. What are they asking one another? About the great news, about which they are in disagreement. Nay, they will come to know. Nay, again, they will come to know. Have we not made the earth as a bed, and the mountains as pegs? And we have created you in pairs. And we have made your sleep as a thing for rest, and have made the night as a covering, and have made the day for livelihood. And we have built above you 7 strong heavens, and have made therein a shining lamp, and have sent down from the rainy clouds abundant water, that we may produce therewith corn and vegetation, and gardens of thick growth.
Thank you for the beautiful recitation, Sister Aisha. Inshallah, we'll see you at the end of the session to send us off with a dua, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Today, we have an important and very relevant topic about the psychology of love languages. The infamous book by Gary Chapman discusses the five languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, physical touch. The author goes into great detail about each love language to help the reader explore ways to improve or strengthen the relationships that matter to us. This is so important in a world where social media has become the norm and virtual communication has become the new reality. You may not be feeling stimulated to seek and or to expect quality in relationships. There are, there are tough challenges ahead of us. So today we have Homa Saidi, who's certainly not unfamiliar to the coffee therapy crowd because we're definitely so excited to have her back. Homa has previously held a love languages session for coffee therapy in which we focused on how to identify our love language. But this time, we will get in a bit deeper to really understand how to integrate the love languages into our everyday life and make use of them in a very practical sense. Homa Saidi is a registered psychotherapist by profession and is the founder of Guided Path Trauma Therapy Services. She has worked in the psychology field for over 18 years, conducting comprehensive psychological assessments and treatment. She has extensive experience and training in refugee mental health, post-traumatic trauma disorder, and anxiety and depression. Homa currently works at the Center of Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH, in the psychological trauma program. You can follow her on Instagram at Muslim Trauma Therapy, and her website also, we will be posting it on the chat shortly. So Homa's website is www.guidedpaththerapy.com. Please look into it in the comments. And Assalamu alaikum, Homa.
Walaikum salam.
I'm just waiting for your video to pop up for me. Okay, so at our last, first of all, Assalamu alaikum and thank you for joining us again. We're so excited about today's session.
Looking forward to it.
Great. So let's start. So the last coffee therapy session that you had with us, we discussed the love languages, according to the book by Gary Chapman, as we mentioned. So, quickly, can you just give us a debrief for those who weren't here, or just a good reminder for all of us, refresh our memories of what the love languages are, and a brief description of them?
Sure. Thank you for that bit of an intro for myself as well as the book. So again, this book was written by Gary Chapman, who I'm not new to the field. He has been doing marriage counseling for over 30 years. So he had a wealth of knowledge and experience that he brought to this. And from that, he defined what the 5 love languages are. So he defines that there are 5 basic love languages. So as you said in your intro, there's words of affirmation, which really is just expressing verbally praise and appreciation. There's quality time, so spending undivided attention with a loved one, receiving gifts. So gifts being a symbol of love. So not that gifts in terms of their price point or their cost, but that they're symbolic of something. Acts of service, which is completing tasks or actions to show love. And physical touch, which is affection through physical touch. So I think some of us think we know what our love language might be, or some of us might have gone more in depth to figure it out. But I do recommend, if you haven't taken the quiz, there is an online quiz that's available. It's free, that will be posted in the comments, that I recommend that people do. It's at 5, like the number 5, lovelanguages.com/profile, and use that as a starting point, because from that, it'll ask you a series of questions. Probably take about 5-10 minutes. And from that, it'll give you your top 2 love languages and with a bit of a description so you can learn a little bit more. It is important to know when it comes to love languages that it's not just, okay, there's 5, I'm one of the 5. There's 5, but there are different dialects or variations between them. So what I mean by that is, so for example, if your love language is words of affirmation, for some people, they feel love when they are praised for their accomplishments, where for others, they feel loved when they are praised for maybe their physical attributes. So there are different variations within each love language, which means there are, a lot more than just 5. What happens, I think, for a lot of people is that we don't realize that we all don't speak the same love language. So I think the base way that we act and react when it comes to the world is we believe everyone's similar to us. That, if I feel love this way, then everyone else feels love the same way. But what happens then is that we end up misfiring, meaning we think we're showing our loved ones love, but they're not feeling the love, which can then lead to issues and resentment. I know we don't have a lot of time to go into a lot of depth about the love languages, but one of the biggest things I hope people can take away when it comes to love languages is that many of us, or most of us, operate on the golden rule, which is you do unto others as you want done for you, meaning I feel love through gifts, so I give those that I love gifts. That would be the golden rule. My hope is that people can start reflecting a little bit and operate on the platinum rule. And that platinum rule is you do unto others as they would want to have done for them. Meaning, if your loved one likes words of affirmation and you're somebody who's into gift, who loves receiving gifts, sure, you can give them gifts, but just keeping in mind that if you want them to feel loved, that praising them would be what would make them feel loved. Okay. And if you were to start from that basis, then things can start shifting. And also when it comes to love languages, it's not just for your spouse or your partner. It's important when it comes to our children, our parents, our siblings, our friends. We all have love languages and we all want to show love to those that we care about. So it is something to keep in mind, in that what can I do when it comes to the platinum rule for the ones I care about?
Thank you. That's great. And I really like how you spoke about, because usually when we read these things or do these kind of tests, we always look at ourselves as with either black or white.
Mm-hmm.
So my love language is this and only this. So there's always an overlap and a gray area. So I'm really glad that you that one. So this is a good segue to our next thing that I wanted to discuss with you as well. So for women who are looking to find their match, how important does self-awareness play into all of this? Having said that we shouldn't be looking at ourselves as one. So how does self-awareness play a role in that journey?
I think self-awareness is actually really underrated. So I think it's something that maybe people talk about, but they don't really take seriously. And to me, I think if you become more self-aware, then you are aware of your thoughts, your beliefs, your disposition. And that way you can actually actively make change happen if it's needed. And you can also start meaningfully considering what you actually need in a partner. So if you're looking for someone to, inshallah, spend the rest of your life with, I think you do need to start from a place of knowledge of yourself and who you are and what's important to you. I'm a big believer in knowledge is power, meaning it's not just about knowledge about everything else around you, but about yourself first. And again, I think that's something we often overlook. Also, I think that a lot of times, at least I hear, is that people focus on being self-aware of definitely the bad things, but what about the good things? So I think we need to be self-aware of both the good and the bad. And I say this particularly as I know this talk is focused on women, is that women, we are guilty of this. We focus on the negative when it comes to ourselves and not the positive. And to me, one of the steps to work towards being in a place to be able to commit to someone, or if you're already in a relationship to go even deeper, is to work on self-awareness, but also your self-worth. So in terms of how you feel about yourself as a person. And one of the things I do with my clients that I've started to do a lot more regularly, and I would recommend others try this, is I have them write out physically or type out an actual list of things that are positive characteristics about them. So not goals, but actual truths about them. So I have them brainstorm it on their own, and sometimes I need to kind of push and prod and add more things to that because, like I said, I often find women aren't so good at that. But things like, I'm a loyal friend, or I try to pray all my prayers on time. I'm a good cook. I have good friends. These are all positive characteristics. And if you notice, I said positive characteristics, not positive goals. This list should be based in truth, meaning you might not believe it fully yet, but there is, you can say, yeah, I am fairly loyal as a friend. I want people to put that down and not just write it down once and you're done. What I then ask clients to do is start reviewing it daily. So maybe put a reminder on their phone and they read it over daily. And the hope is that if you review it regularly, that it becomes more ingrained within you and that you can start going to more positive characteristics about yourself, not just the negative, which often happens. And I know when it comes to finding a potential spouse, it can get kind of negative in our heads, right? In terms of if there are times when it's not going our way. So it really is to do some of that groundwork around that. So this would be something I would highly recommend, to start with self-awareness, but also go into how do we work on self-worth.
Great, thank you. And I think it's a very good practical moment, because sometimes when we get to hear and learn more about deeper psychotherapy or like deeper psychological elements, it's hard to bring them to practicality, like what's practical. So that's a very good practical tip of starting to do this, inshallah. So once we learn about our own love language and be aware of it, how could this help us in finding a partner?
Sorry, I'm not sure how I got muted. For me, knowing my love language was a game changer. So it really helped me work on my own self-awareness in terms of why I do certain things and why I can sometimes get frustrated. So for me, my love language is acts of service, which, to be honest, initially took me by surprise. It wasn't what I assumed, which is why I do recommend people take that quiz or read the book. But it did then help me understand why I put in that effort around certain things around the house. And often I used to get disappointed when, frankly, my family didn't feel love based on this, because to be honest, this wasn't their love language. And it really helped me realize that I needed to do the platinum rule, not the golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of helping you find a partner, I don't think that there are certain love languages that are incompatible. Meaning, I think we can all love someone with a different love language than we have. So I don't think it needs to be, okay, so my love language is acts of service, so I should find someone who also is the same love language. Because like I said, first of all, that's just gonna narrow your search, and there are different dialects, so it might not work anyways. What I think is important is to realize that there are differences. So how to do things for others to make them feel loved is important, right? So in terms of not doing things for others because, we should, or it's an expectation, but we try to change our intention, right? In terms of, I want to do this for my loved one because I love them, not because I have to, or because, they're nagging me, because I love them. And I think that really, goes back to our faith in terms of what our intentions are, and for then it to be a blessed action, right? So I do think it is that, no, don't look out for someone who has the same love language as you. Just be aware that there will likely be differences between you and them, and to make the basis of it a good intention to do things for the sake of love for them.
So within that journey, as we're going through it, how can we identify the red flags or the deal breakers, as you had mentioned before, when the two love languages crash, or just in general? How can we identify the red flags?
Yeah, so I think red flags is something, people should keep an eye out for when it comes to potential partners. And I actually think people should start with some self-reflection, self-awareness, and start with, well, what are my basic requirements that I'm looking for in a life partner? And hopefully, I would say this is not a massive list, but what are the non-negotiables for you? So for example, for some people, it might be, I'd like my partner to pray most of their prayers, or I would like them to have a stable job, or that they are supportive of me working, or that I'm physically attracted to them. So make a list, like I said, hopefully not a massive 20 point list, but a list of your basic non-negotiables. And that's a place to start. And then I think after that, if you are getting to know someone in terms of things to look out for, in terms of what's been done in some of the research out there do you enjoy spending time together, or when you're talking to them or messaging them or communicating with them? Do you actually enjoy that time together? Do you look forward to it? Are there any activities that you enjoy doing together? So again, if you notice, I didn't say, do you all have all the same activities that you enjoy together? But is there at least one or two things that you would enjoy doing together? Because I don't think that your potential spouse has to have the exact same interests as you, but there should be a little bit of an overlap. Are there any activities that, do you share core values and beliefs? And I actually think this is one that becomes more and more important as your marriage grows over the years in terms of values and beliefs, particularly if when children come into the picture, or in-laws and families and decisions that are made. So it is an important place to look out for red flags. Is there mutual respect? Like I said, are you physically attracted to them? And I think that's often also underrated in our community, in that this is important, and to not ignore this if this comes up for you, in that, I'm not even attracted to him. That to me is a red flag, because this is someone you are considering spending the rest of your life with. Are you able to disagree with respect? This to me is really important. Because it might not be the full extent of what might happen after you get married, but it is a bit of a window into what's happening when you disagree. And I know how it is when you're getting to know someone. We often smooth over or look past some of the red flags. So to me, I think it is with that increased self-awareness of what are my basic requirements, that are my non-negotiables, so I can make decisions based on that. And then once I'm getting to know someone, what are the red flags? Am I noticing them? And am I missing anything? So if they are, seemingly quite angry or upset over what you would, after some self-reflection, is something kind of small, it might be something you want to consider. Is this somebody that you think you would match with? Again, I think red flags are a reason. It doesn't mean they're like, it's a no-go for sure. But it's something for you to keep an eye on, and not just, brush under the rug at every turn.
Great. So just within the subject of red flags, if somebody has how can we, when we're bringing the self-awareness, how can we identify or differentiate between the red flags that do actually exist in the person, and the red flags that come up based on our own old experience and old trauma and everything that happened in our life prior to meeting the partner? So is it really somebody, for example, somebody who just had a negative reaction? Does that bring some trauma that I have gone through before, or is it really a red flag related to that person?
I do think in terms of that it's again going back to your self-awareness and self-reflection, right? So it is learning to not necessarily react impulsively, which I know is hard when emotions are present. But again, with the current age, especially with COVID and how we're getting to know people, a lot of it is virtual right now. So I think if you're able to slow down, and if you aren't sure about someone, to give yourself that bit of a space and that break to reflect on, is this something that's being triggered within me, or is this based in reality? And I think we're all in a different place when it comes to being able to check in on ourselves in terms of that self-awareness. If you know that you're not that far along yet in your self-awareness journey, I would say check in with somebody that you trust, that knows you. And hey, this is what's kind of coming up with this person that I'm getting to know. What do you think? Am I missing something? Is this really a red flag? Like, I think the importance of having someone to bounce something off of that you believe is trustworthy, right? So again, not just, everybody, your whole circle of friends, but I do think being able to bounce something off of someone, particularly if there is previous, whether it be trauma or bad experiences, with potential suitors that you are able to objectively make decisions and see.
Great. So now we'll just take a deep breath before we jump into the more, I don't want to say complicated, but the deeper dive into more questions and challenges. So for those who are tuning in just now, please feel free to comment in the comment section or post your questions, and we will attend to them before the session ends. And if you don't feel comfortable sending your question here, please send us a direct message to our Facebook inbox. So having covered the foundation at the beginning, so now we come to name one of the challenges within finding a partner, especially as you have already mentioned, everything is now virtual. How do we deal with rejection? Because rejection isn't always pretty, but it is something that comes within the journey of finding a partner or a potential suitor. So if it's not working, and how do we deal with rejection?
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I think it's important to start with, I know it's hard out there for people that are looking, it's not pretty. And especially adding in the extra stressor or layer of COVID, it's even harder, I know. And unfortunately, rejection, whatever you want to call it, let's just use the word, rejection is part of what happens when you are looking for a potential partner. And that hurts. What I would say to people is, if that has happened to you, let's say it just happened, I would refer back to the original list I recommended people make. So a list of positive characteristics. And I would say maybe read that on repeat for a few days. So maybe it will be, I'm going to read this a few times today and a few times tomorrow. I know I've had some of my clients will put them in as a repeated calendar reminder in the day. So every few hours, I'm going to read this over. Because like I said at the beginning, I think particularly women, we often can spiral into some negative thoughts about ourselves. And the reason I think it's important that people read over that list of positive characteristics is that, yes, rejection hurts, but we need to be able to start realizing rejection is not a reflection of who you are, right? It is not about your self-worth, that it is really around the compatibility between the two of you. It wasn't meant to be, right? So it's not about you, it's about the potential connection between the two of you. But I think often, to be honest, understandably, a lot of us immediately jump to, this is a reflection of me that I was rejected. There is something wrong with me. This has happened a few times. Where I think it is, nope, look at my positive list of characteristics. These are truths about me, so remember that. But the other thing is that I also fully think it's important to acknowledge that it hurts. And you do need to have space to be able to let yourself feel hurt, right? So if that means that you need to have a good cry, coupled with a big bowl of ice cream, or a hot chocolate, or whatever it is, with whipped cream, stacked to the top, whatever it is, I think self-soothing is really important. And again, I don't think is underrated. I think it is. No, I think in those initial couple of days, I give people a pass. Go ahead, self-soothe, it hurts. So try to do things that help you feel a little bit better. But then I think people need to take action. So by action, that could mean I'm going to work on reviewing my list a few times a day. It might mean I'm going to take a walk, because when I move my body, I feel a little bit better in terms of my mood. It could mean I'm going to reach out to a positive friend that I have to get a bit of a pick-me-up. It could mean I'm going to start a new comedy series on Netflix because I need a good laugh. So the initial stages really is yeah, rejection sucks, but it's not a reflection of you. But please do self-soothe. So take care of you, but then take some action. Because I think the longer people stay in the I just need to self-soothe stage, it can become a bit of it can spiral a little bit into darker places for people where they spiral downwards. So I will say, give yourself a couple of days, and depending on how long it was or how strongly connected you did feel, you might need a week or so to self-soothe, but then it is starting to push yourself to taking action to get yourself out of that loop. I think, that would be my main recommendations when it comes to that. And again, just the whole acknowledgement of it is hard. It's not something that's in your mind that this is, you know, everyone else finds it super easy to find a partner, particularly in COVID. No, it's not. It is difficult. So don't put yourself down by making it seem that it's a you thing, that only you find it difficult. From everyone I know, it's a universal. I haven't met anyone that said it's actually really easy and it's fun to find your potential life partner right now.
Thank you. I think that was great reminder of not internalizing it and feeling it's all about me, and just going back to our affirmations list. So as we have already discussed and mentioned COVID many times, and the virtual life, which is the reality that we're living in right now. So searching for a partner was already some challenging some way, but now it's even more challenging where everything is virtual and people are depending on social media heavily to just run their lives, let alone finding a partner. So from a psychotherapist lens, how do we stay realistic with our expectations, staying positive, mindful, without having to compromise the quality of the partner that we're looking for?
I like this. I like that you have jammed a few things into that, but I think these are important concepts and things that we need to talk about, especially as we go into the winter. At least in the Ontario area, and I think a lot of places around the world right now, is the numbers are rising, meaning we are kind of going into a lockdown type of situation, meaning we're more restricted in our homes. So I think it is really important that we start looking at ways to stay positive, right? So what are we going to do that? So like I said earlier, I probably said a few times, make that positive list of your own characteristics, have it handy on your phone. The other thing I highly recommend, and it's something I've started doing a lot more over the last year, is having a formal gratitude practice. And I think this is really helpful. And it's not just, you know, I think it's good and it's from my own experience. Studies show this. Studies show the difference between people that are happy and those that are unhappy is gratitude. So the difference isn't, one group has wealth, or is married, or has children, or has an amazing job. It's none of that. It's gratitude. And what I think is really important when it comes to gratitude is that it is rooted in our faith, right? So having a gratitude practice can become a spiritual practice, right? Which again goes back to our intention behind why we're doing it, and to make it a blessed act that we are doing. And in terms of gratitude practice, it doesn't have to be anything too complicated. So it can be something as simple as starting or ending your day with 2 or 3 things that you are grateful for. Could be that. Or you could choose to purchase a journal or a book that's out there on the market. So for myself, I know for me, it can be helpful to have something physical to write down or as a cue to remind me. So I use the 5-minute journal. So I find it fairly simple, and it's something that I can kind of reflect back on and flip back pages to see what I was writing about 6 months ago, a year ago. But it can be whatever you'd like it to be when it comes to that. When it comes to the actual gratitude itself, it doesn't have to be lofty things. And I think I know when I started, I kind of got stuck in my head in terms of it should be meaningful things, and it should be, things that I should be grateful for, that are like my vision, my smell. Yes, you should write those things. But I also write things like I'm grateful for good Wi-Fi because I work from home. I'm grateful to be able to make myself a good, decent cup of coffee at home. Because these are the small things are often where it's at, to be honest with you. If you become grateful for the little things, the big things start kind of kicking in more, right? So I do recommend, in order to stay positive, start with a gratitude practice. Mindfulness is the other aspect that I think it would be really beneficial if people started to have a daily mindfulness practice. I think it's one of those things that's going to become kind of like the new yoga. Mindfulness has a lot of research backing it. And mindfulness is really just a way to focus on being present in the now. So I think that's, again, very rooted in our faith, to be focused on what we're doing right now, whether that be in our prayer, whether that be if we're interacting with our families, our friends, but it takes practice. I think if you do mindfulness, that is when you develop self-awareness, you increase positivity, and that's really the place that you're going to be able to make better informed decisions about who you are looking for in a life partner, right? So if you are able to really ground yourself and focus on the now, you can be clearer in your thoughts. For those that are new to mindfulness, I always recommend starting with a guided app or a guided YouTube link or something to really help you through it. Because, so I know for myself, sometimes my thoughts are going a mile a minute. So it's hard for me to kind of slow down and focus on the now. So for myself, when I started, I found it easier to use an app. So I know one of the recent ones that's come out is that one focused on the Muslim community. So the Sabr app. There's also Calm, the Calm app, and they both have at least the basic levels are available free if you download that, but it could be a good place for people to start. You can also do a short mindfulness practice, which is what I've started doing. So for myself, if I can try to take a walk that does not involve me multitasking, which really is just me focusing on, sometimes it's the things I can hear or the sights. I really focus on that, and it does bring me calm and peace. And with practice, you will start noticing that anxiety starts kind of going away and your thoughts become a bit clearer. Another good way to do a mindfulness practice, I think would be good to try out, is while you're eating. So I think particularly here in the West, what we do when we eat, we multitask. We watch something, I sometimes read a book, we talk, we do other things, and we kind of just inhale our food. And that to me is also not grounded in our faith, where I think if you can actually have mindfulness kind of be coupled with gratitude. If you slow down how you eat and focus on the five senses in terms of the taste, the texture, the smells, just thinking about the effort that's gone into this meal, I think that in and of itself naturally brings about gratitude, and it helps you really ground yourself and make that more of a peaceful process. I will say though, that you may not be able to last more than 30 to 60 seconds when you first start. At least that's what I found. But I know that when I started, that I knew that was 30 or 60 seconds more than I had ever done before. So it will be small steps at first, but if you were to start and you practice doing mindfulness, you practice doing gratitude, just be kind with yourself and you can start building from there. And in terms of that part of your question about keeping things realistic while searching for a partner, that basic your list of requirements or that non-negotiable list, that's not something that should be set in stone, meaning you should be revisiting that list. I actually feel that about any list, whether it be that positive characteristic list, any list, goals that you make, they shouldn't be, okay, I did it and I'm done with it. No, they should be revisited. And you should do that regularly to see if it's realistic and make adjustments as needed. So you can simply start by saying it out loud and realizing, hey, am I being realistic with my list here? Does it make sense? My hope is that people learn to check themselves and call themselves out on these things that we have as goals and requirements. But I think part of that self-awareness is that we might not be there yet, right? We might not be the best judge for that in terms of, are we being realistic? So I would recommend asking somebody you trust, that you believe your best interest in mind, sister, a cousin, a good friend, a teacher, and bounce off that list off of them. Hey, this is what I think is my basic requirements for finding a life partner. What do you think? You know me. Is this realistic? Because it can take time for us to check ourselves and realize what our own blind spots are. But I think in the meantime, if you can reach out and get help with that and feedback, inshallah, you will get to the point where you might be able to do that for yourself and be able to bounce things off of yourself and realize, that's not realistic. I need to tweak that. Or, you know what, I actually feel like I need to add more to this. So I do think it's something regularly check in on your requirements or what you believe is on your checklist for a partner, and reevaluate it.
That's great. Thank you. That's a lot of information. I'm just reading the comments now. So please, if you have any question, make sure you write it down or any comments. So I've had great positive comments about the session, and it's a very good session. Another sister said, alhamdulillah, very, very good session and important information. I know you mentioned two apps, which is Sabr and Calm, and we're going to post names as well on the comments and chat for the sisters to follow. That's great. And now we have two questions. So would you like to add anything before we jump into the question session?
Okay. That's good.
Okay. So how do I deal with parents who are putting pressure on meeting someone for marriage and it's just not working out?
So I think number one, I know with parents, there's a lot of stress and added pressure. I do think having planning out what you want to say to them, because I'm a big believer in open communication, but I also know in our community that can be hard when you add in the cultural context. But I think having it, almost planning out what you want to say to your parents in terms of whether it be, I am interested in getting married and finding someone, but I actually find having the additional pressure from you guys actually makes it harder for me to do that. But I think we have the same goals in mind. So being able to articulate what you're feeling and not to frame it in a way where your parents feel like they need to be defensive or that they're being attacked. So I think often when we talk just off the top of our heads, we often do a lot of, when you say this, I feel, you're doing this to me and you don't love me or you don't care about how it makes me feel, where often people stop listening because they get defensive. Where if you can plan what you want to say and frame it in a lot of, I feel this way, I feel pressure. It might not be what you mean to be doing, but this is how I interpret it to be. Is there anything we can do to try to look for a compromise, right? Because let's be honest, you might not get the way you want when it comes to your parents just backing off fully, but it is to have that realistic hope that they can kind of give you a little bit more breathing room and space, because if their goal is to have you happily married, that it's in their best interest to give you a little bit of space.
Yeah, thank you. Another question was, how do I avoid comparing myself to those who are married and more settled in lives, like friends, for example?
Yeah, no, that's a rough one, especially if it's in your face a lot, right? Whether it be social media posts that people do, or just obviously if they're your closer friends, that's what they're going to talk about. I think it is going back to that. What do you have going on for you? What's going well? And I think a lot of people that aren't in, relationship often think that, there is nothing going on in their life if they don't have a partner. And I think it really is to start looking at that belief and challenging that, because you are a lot more than your potential partner, right? You in a relationship would be. So it is really starting to look at, what do I have to offer? What is going well for me? What have I accomplished in this time frame, whether it be educationally, professionally, maybe community work, in terms of what you're able to offer your friends, maybe your nieces and nephews. And if you feel like it's hard for you to, you know what, I'm not doing a lot, that could be a step, a point that you self-reflect and realize, you know what, maybe I should focus on not just looking inwards at things that make me feel bad about myself, but let me do more things maybe for community. Because doing for others actually is, I know there's a lot of people that think, volunteering is altruistic. It's, it's doing for others. It has a benefit for us. It's a significant benefit for us personally. It really helps lift your mood, and it makes you realize that it's not just all about you, not in a narcissistic way, but we often get caught up in a, nothing's going right for me, look at my life, it's bad. It's like, no, what good things are happening in your life? So to try to challenge your thoughts that things aren't going well for you, and if they're not going so well for you, maybe try to take some steps to help change that.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take 2 seconds to look at the Q's and questions and comments as well, if there are any questions or comments before we wrap up our session. Okay, I can't thank you enough, Homa, really, for joining us today. It was a very rich session. We've had a lot of information. May Allah reward you for all the knowledge that you've given us today. So for anybody who wants to follow Homa again on Instagram, it's Muslim Trauma Therapy, and we'll put it in the chat as well. That's her Instagram account, and the website is guidedpaththerapy.com. Thank you so much, Homa. So a quick reminder about our next coffee therapy event, which will be held on Sunday, December 6th at 11 Eastern Time. You can join us again for our very last session for this year. And the session is called Reflections on the Past Year, which will be interesting and we're all looking forward to. Please make sure you check the information. The session will be featuring Asma Ali, a registered psychotherapist and director of Centric Care. To follow Being Me future events, we have so many events coming up. Please visit our event page at attendbm.com. attendbm.com. And now we're going to bring Sister Aisha to close with a dua for us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome back.
Jazakum Allah khair. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Sister Huma for her knowledge and her expertise. It's of great benefit to many of us in the community, and it's really appreciated. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all the organizers at Being Me and the volunteers who brought this event to us. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Glory is to you, O Allah, and praise is to you. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except you, and we seek your forgiveness and repent to you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. By the time, surely humanity is in loss, except for those who have faith, do good, and encourage one another to truth and encourage one another to patience. Assalamu alaikum.
So thank you, everybody, and have a peaceful rest of your day. Assalamu alaikum.